Okay. Let's call the meeting of the Finance and Planning Committee to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And I assume everybody has a chance to have reviewed the minutes. Any comments, corrections, edits? No? If none, then motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Agenda, any comments on the agenda, additions, deletions, mostly additions? No? No comments, motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, second,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
comments? Board representative, you're on, probably, anything to say?
I really have none. I'm looking forward to today.
Okay. Comments from the chair? Really don't have any. So let's on to new business. Review the 2021 budget, which we all got a peek at last week. We've all had a chance to comment. Karina has responded to some of the questions. But first of all, I probably, for the record, express my appreciation and undoubtedly the appreciation of everybody on staff for you and everybody else. When thinking about it, this is kind of the first time for the board. It's the first time for all of us, and it's the first time for many of you. You've been through a budget cycle, but not in your current position. And I think we all have the same thing in heart, which is the budget is really, really important, and we just all want to work together to make it the best possible budget we can, and so that we can all make good decisions. A little bit about the calendar. In mid-November, the target is for the board to approve the budget. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. 2 weeks prior to that, which is, I don't know, roughly November 4th, the board has a work session, and they will be discussing the budget. Next Tuesday, the day prior to that, we are scheduled to meet, and that's probably that will be our last, this committee's last opportunity to discuss the budget prior to the board discussing the budget. So between now and next Tuesday, we would hope to address all the issues that we decide that we want to address. And then the board then goes on to discuss the budget and hopefully approve it 2 weeks hence. If there are things that this committee needs to do between a week from Wednesday and the board meeting, that needs to be determined. We won't know until they meet. But in the meantime, I guess the question is, what are we really aiming to do today? And I think that is a discussion item for all of us to try to figure out. One of the things are just identify what are the most important things that we need to address between now and next week. And what questions should we raise and how much more work does Karina have to do? Any other ideas about what is it that we're really trying to do today?
No, I think from my perspective that touches upon it. I just know, having gone through this, I'm probably the only one here that went through this process last year with the ad hoc committee working on the budget side. So I can't speak to the 2020 format and 2019 format, and there are some, and I didn't know this until last year, but in our budget policy, It does outline some things that need to be addressed in the budget narrative, not so much the numbers. I think I feel pretty comfortable about the numbers myself. I think it meets the budget guidance that was established. But I think now we just work on more presentation of what has been presented to boards in the past, and we certainly want to make it, and I think the better we could work on fine tuning the presentation, the less questions that will come up as a result. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm ready to speak for that after some other people weigh in on what they think we need to be doing today. But that's my main objective today, to bring that on the table for discussion.
I guess from my perspective, I feel comfortable with some of the numbers, and I still need some explanation on a couple of them, but I assume that we'll get to that as we run through these, particularly at the high level, and then figure out if we need to drill down into those. But I'm hoping we don't have to drill down into a bunch.
Okay. Kathy, you have any comments at this point?
Other than, I've got a few little technical things that I have questions about, but this is a learning year for me, so I'll try to keep quiet.
Well, it's a learning year for all of us.
Yeah, but my curve needs to be much steeper. But
Right.
Learn every day,
Mm-hmm.
learn every day.
Mark, any comments?
Well, this is my first year also. If John, who's put in a lot of work on this thing, if he's comfortable with the numbers, then I feel pretty comfortable.
Well, there are questions. I mean, I'll, like Lloyd said, we can always look at some different things, where the numbers came from, and need to be solid, that everybody here has a good understanding of that. So that's always open for discussion.
Right.
But I'm saying from just by and large. So you want to start at that avenue first, asking questions about the numbers? Lloyd?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of have my agenda laid
Okay.
out, but we definitely should at least get to the numbers at some
All
point.
right.
I mostly second what John said. I'm pretty comfortable with the vast majority of the numbers. Like everybody else, there are definitely a few numbers here and there you want to question, but it was sort of thematic to the comments that we traded via email regarding the narrative, and we will get to that. So I mostly second what John's saying. Okay, let's start the process of commenting and reviewing the budget itself. And I probably want to get to two kind of big topics. The first is, as John said, a quick look at the 2020 budget, last year's budget, the package, and we did comment on these, again, via the email, sort of in the introduction section, even before you get to the budget itself. Perhaps consider adding in the budget guidance that was publicized. The other is, and this is really a discussion item, last year they had revenues and expenses greater than $50,000 by line item. If you actually publish that and you go down it, people will start asking questions. How useful it is, I'm not really clear, but I think it will stimulate discussion. I almost guarantee that. But there's a difference between interesting and important.
Necessary.
Yeah. So so it's really a question for discussion. How important is it?
Karina's dying to say something.
Oh, please, yeah, please.
Well, as noted in the emails, I was focusing on trying to get the
Oh,
numbers
yeah,
and
absolutely.
stuff. So the narrative, I understand, still needs to come, and I'm working on that, and that will be pulled together. over 50 for revenue and expenses, I don't have a problem pulling it. It was one of the later things that I was trying to get to. My perspective on that, which comes from, and I understand it's two different point of views, was that was more a necessity because not all detail at every level was provided. So providing all the GL detail kind of takes up for that. But I understand that the community is not getting the entire GL detail. So that will be completed.
Okay.
So, right now, we are planning on putting that in the budget package?
I will.
Well, okay, so let me play devil's advocate for a minute.
Unless y'all don't want it.
Well, I'm not saying the board wouldn't want it, but the question is, now that we have reset the spending level guidelines, and the board is to keep track of everything above 50,000, including accumulative expenses, is that a necessary item for the budgeting process? My initial reaction to that is probably not. I mean, that's my initial reaction to it, so that's my 2 cents worth.
My 2 cents on that is, I found it, well, I don't think it's absolutely necessary item on the budget. I have 2 other pages that I'll get to in a moment that I think are. Those 2, they're nice, they're conversation. I know the first time I saw them, I went, darn, look at all those things, we spent 50, you know, a conversation piece, it's enlightening, but is it necessary for the budget packet? I don't think it is either. Nice to have, if you got spare time and nothing else to do, and you know, but the answer to that's probably.
So, yeah, I'd say if that dropped off the radar because
Yeah.
other things are more important, fine. If it can be provided and it's not cumbersome,
Yeah, my
Then
first
so be it.
question was, is it easy or is it hard to produce? So-
Well, it's consolidating everything out of the 4,000 GL lines and narrowing it down,
Piece of
so.
In your spare time.
Yeah, so, I mean, my first reaction is, if it's hard, then, yeah, go do it. Go do other things that are more important. Okay,
That might have been one of those things that Liz last year was saying, is keeping her up till 2 AM working on.
right, but since, you know, this is the first
Yeah.
time the board is, you know, reviewing the budget, if they had experience that said, yeah, we think that's important, then you leave it in, but, you know, we don't have that.
well, and again, I'm just speaking as one member of the board.
Right, right.
So,
Would-
but I'm sure they'll be listening to this, so if they've got objections to it, then we'll adjust accordingly.
Is my assumption correct that in the past, if it was under $50,000, it was not brought out in a singular attention? So in other words, because we are providing, whether it's a $5 expense all the way up to $2 million or whatever the case is, was that report in the past generated more because you weren't given as much detail? Or were you provided all of the same information in the past? As far as whether it's a $5 expense in an account?
Well, again, when the wording on the new spending limits was put in, it was intended to be cumulative, where the general manager would keep the board apprised of categories that were going above $50,000. And then, of course, the one-time expenditures of $50,000. I obviously wasn't on the board, so I don't know what they did or didn't get, but I think we put some mechanisms in place, particularly the people requesting the information, all the way up to what the board gets to see now. So, to me, we're just kind of going overboard a little bit if we keep asking for more detail in reports that probably are not going to be real beneficial if we're getting the information that we need through the channels that were set up, so.
Yeah, it was just the one, have you seen last year's? budget?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically one page, revenue in excess of 50 and costs in excess of 50, expenses in excess of 50.
Yeah.
So, I'm not gonna fight hard on that one.
Yeah, me
So,
either.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
neither. Okay. That probably leaves you in limbo, is that right, sir?
Well, like I said, I know I still have the narrative to wrap up. I was
Okay.
planning on putting the budget guidance in there.
Yeah. So, again, we're back to,
Yeah.
if it can be provided
Yes.
without a lot of detail, or without a lot of work on it, then go ahead and provide it, because somebody
important.
will inevitably ask for it anyway.
Okay. The next item John brought up, which are from last year, the 2 pages, one is called Key Strategic and Policy Compliance Summary, and the other is called Strategy Overview. The Key Strategic and Policy Compliance Summary, which is really a cool title, anyway. The first section summarizes the 4 enterprise goals and the things that tie closely to the budget. It's not clear to me, well, it is clear to me, we don't have enterprise goals for 2021, so I'm not exactly sure what you tie to. Go ahead.
Let me address the subject. There will be an all-day meeting on November 11th
Mhm.
of the board. We intend to come out of that with a 1-year strategic plan that will then feed into what is being done by the work group for strategic planning. And also, the intent will be that it is a document that can be updated every year. So that will be taken into account that day as part of that process. With the changes we've had on the board, quite frankly, we're lagging behind in some of this stuff, but it is on our docket for November 11th.
Roy, did you say a 1 year? A 1 year?
For 2021, the strategic plan for 2021.
But it's for 1 year.
Yeah, because you guys are working on that.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah, because you guys were focused on the 3 to 5, and I felt it was our responsibility, the board's responsibility, to, particularly in this time of COVID, for us to be developing that in concert with staff. So we will be doing that, and we'll be putting it out for you guys to review, or this committee to review, so. But yeah, our intent was only to have something for 2021 that could also be updated as we continue down the path.
I just asked the young man to make copies of the 2 pages, because I wanted everybody, I don't think everybody has them, you don't see them. To your point, it's slightly different than what the board is gonna be working on. I think a lot of it, what this goes into more detail of what the staff is going to be working on. What is their strategy focus to attain the goals, in the monetary budgetary goals in this budget?
In the budget.
In the budget, right.
Right.
That, and also there are certain budget policy requests that are in the budget policy that spell out, again, what needs to be documented. Example, membership equity needs to, at a minimum, stay flat or increase every year. Need a statement to that effect. That needs to be included in the budget. And that comes right from policy, okay? And given the newness of everybody, you know, if you're not familiar with that, you know, we want to make sure that, at least from a policy standpoint, it's all correct, all the, you know, I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, it goes to the board. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So he'll be back shortly with that.
Okay. While we're waiting, and you're doing both pages?
Yes,
Pages, okay.
yeah, I'm gonna do both pages.
Okay.
Just give an overview of both pages.
All right.
But, you know, the other thing that I'll tie it in, and it'll probably come back in just a second. go to any one of these different division pages, okay? One of my comments was they all look different. Some have no comments down below, others do. This should be a consistent format. But then when I looked at this strategic strategy page, I think that's what made up for maybe a little incompleteness on this. You just gathered them all and put them all on one
Right.
page, so.
And so I will say that as far as I hadn't had the opportunity to go through all of the verbiage documentation to prepare it all, but as I was going down, I was having a little bit of difficulty in the fact of, you know, what goals are we trying to work towards and stuff, because in my experience within the POA, every goal was centered around the strategic goals. So, I hope I'm making sense. I'm not a very good explainer here. While some of it is very clear and it doesn't change, I didn't know if there were some goals that were going to change and that would have changed kind of what you guys were expecting to see. So it's kind of in the dark a little bit, and I hadn't had the opportunity to go knock and get some light.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great discussion, because I think this is maybe where we've missed the boat in preparing the budget in the past. Having, again, seen this for the second year now, thinking a lot of it was centered on, I won't get into the past that much, but to me, if marketing says, here's my budget, and it passes, I'm just using marketing as an example, here's gonna be what my expenses are, okay? They ought to be able to describe in 4 or 5 bullets what their strategy is gonna be for spending that money, okay? And sometimes I would think maybe those words might have been provided for them on the sheet. That should come from them. And the same from every department. That should come from them. You're, as the controller prior to CFO, just making sure that revenue and that cost makes sense in the grand scheme of things, and you know, it's a total picture. So anyway, thank you so much for doing that.
Basically, it's a statement of, this is what you're proposing for your budget. How are you going to accomplish it?
And then that then is something that people can be held accountable to, all right? This is what you said you were going to do. So if everybody, if it's okay, I'll just keep on this, if everybody just looks at this strategy overview as an example, that page, all right? That's the page that has been, I think, in every budget for a while, anyway. How much what's the CPI, how much is that going up? What are some of the other sources of revenue? Speaks to the realtor plan. How many discovery packages is the target? Okay. Why is sanitation going up? Utility rate increases. Those are all, everything particular to revenue. It's just listed in a row right there. What I was saying initially is, because I had forgotten about this page, those should have been listed under each specific department. It doesn't matter if they are or not, as long as they're captured somewhere. And this would be critical information that the board would, I would think, Lloyd, you guys would want to see, and ladies want to see. This is the high level, boom, deferred maintenance. What are we doing there? Okay, deferred maintenance was a budget guidance focal point. So for 2021, so where are we going to spend the dollars in deferred maintenance? Marketing, what are we going to do? Reserves, are we on our way to our goal of getting those up? 2020 was the 4th year of the 5-year plan, so 2021 should be speaking to finishing, hitting that goal, the 5th year. And then subsidization, and I don't have to read it to you, but this is just the one-page synopsis, snapshot of that. Second page is, it references, particularly in the second half, the policies, okay, and it refers back to the budget policy, audit and funds control, debt usage and management. You know, there were a couple of ratios being used there at that time. I don't know if we're gonna continue to do that or not. Reserve funds, delinquent accounts. I think these two pages are the meat and potatoes, really, of direction of the budget.
Well, I agree, it's very important information, and I will work on pulling all these together.
So you think you have most of this already somewhere, or?
Oh, some of it's I'm gonna need some input from everybody else as far as their divisions and how that goes.
Absolutely.
Some of this information I do have as far as I know, it was a 0.3% increase for assessments and stuff, but no, I do not have all of this information already.
Well, I'm gonna add this to the discussion session next week with the board also, so that they can have a chance to review this and see if they've got any input that could assist staff too. Okay?
That's all I have on that.
Okay. Okay, the next thing I wanted to tackle was what I kind of call the big dog, which is what everybody is really interested in. And thank you for handing this out. If everybody's like me, they hate using their home printer because every time you print out something, you have to replace the toner cartridge, which costs you $40.
Don't ask me how many toner cartridges.
Right, so, yeah, you're probably into debt for like $200 or something. But anyway, okay, sad news, there's no page numbers, but I call it page 4.
Well, I printed it in the last 5 minutes.
I understand. Compensation overview.
Hey, sure, let me get there. All right.
Everybody likes to talk about compensation. Okay, my first question is, when you look at head count, 2020, 2019, first question is, what is 2020 referred to?
That's a typo, I just didn't have it updated. It's 2021 versus 20.
Okay. And typically, 2021, well, that's the budget,
Yes.
and 2020 is usually the budget.
Yes.
Okay. I guess my request, and this is for discussion, not my favorite comparison.
Why is it going down?
No. Comparing it, I guess when I look at these things, and I would strongly prefer something that looks like actual. So the closest thing to 2020 actual would probably be 2020, what you forecast for the end of the year, which for all intents and purposes is what you got today. I don't think there's a lot of planned hiring or decrease in head count. And I guess generally I'd also like to see 2019 probably end of year. And so you just get some sense of trend. So that's my first observation, and that's for, like I said, everything is up for discussion.
Well, on that category, and can I remind everybody to try and speak into the mics, because again, picking up for the video. And this was a big concern of mine, and here's why. And I did see it's gone down approximately 500,000 from the original document I received anyway. But it's still on this document showing 17,333 for compensation on the one you handed to us just a few minutes ago.
17,333?
Yes.
$17,333,577.
So you're saying this doesn't,
Doesn't-
page 1
yeah.
does not agree to page 4?
Correct.
Because page 4 has a different number.
Oh, okay, well, I hadn't gotten to page 4.
Okay.
I was hung up on page 1.
Don't blame you.
Because in the previous document I had, that compensation number was $17,790,000. We need a reconciliation of why, when I've been already told that we have reduced overall salary $728,000 through the reorganization, that my 2019 actual was $15,951,000, and we're, depending on which of these two numbers, we're now $1.6 million different from what we actually spent in 19. 20's not a good gauge, so I need to figure that. That's, to me, that's a huge reconciliation issue, particularly when I look at departments like public services appears to be going up 23%. Public works appears to be going up 18%. Innovation, which I really would like us to come up with a name that's descriptive of whatever that group does, because that doesn't get it for me personally, is going up 35%. So I'm having difficulty understanding where these numbers come, and I tracked them all the way back down to each of these departments. Divisions. I did not track them down to each individual department within a division. And it's just not making any sense to me.
Okay.
That's just a
So-
general comment.
So if we, can we look at one in particular so I can follow
Sure.
where you're,
Sure.
so Public Works, for example.
Get the public.
What page number is that on?
Ooh, cheap shot, cheap shot.
It's about from the bottom, I think.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Public Works? Okay.
So you were calling off some percentages. Can,
Yeah, so let's just take that line item. Right now, it's showing that in 2019, your actual was $1,072,000. Right now, it's at $2,085,000.
now, this compensation line on all of these includes all of your insurance and benefits.
No, I understand.
That's
Yeah,
not just
yeah,
wages. So
We get that.
we've had roughly a 10% increase over each year for our benefits, which comes, for example, I just adjusted for that this morning, and it was, I want to say it was roughly $400,000. So that means we incurred that last year as well. And then last year we had the first minimum wage increase, and then 21 we had the additional minimum wage increase.
Which, as I understand, is about $400,000 also.
It actually was, so if you look at this sheet that has the comparison, I went through and I added a column, wage increase effect, and I
We got
went,
compensation sheet?
yes.
Page 4.
You numbering them?
Yeah, maybe we should all take a few minutes and number out.
Yeah, we can all number them the same, that'd be the trick.
So this is to show you all of the increases from 20 to 21. I will note how I arrived at these numbers is I went by the pay grades and by the increase to their pay based upon the percentage that they were receiving. You will notice public safety does have a little bit extra built into it because of losing our people. But it,
Right, and that's why I'm saying 20 is not a good gauge to be able to gauge the comparison of salaries to, particularly because of COVID. So I think it would be easier for me, and I think for most property owners, if they could see how we got from what we actually spent in 2019 to what we're projecting to spend in 2021. This is going to be a huge line to overcome because of the amount and because there's been so much focus on it. So I just think a deep dive into that needs to be made. Well, not necessarily a deep dive. My other comment is that it does us no good whatsoever to compare anything to a budget from last year, 2020 budget. First of all, we knew they were erroneous when they were issued, and then COVID blew all that out of the water anyway. So we have had a tendency in the past to do comparisons against budgets when it ought to be against actual. That's just another general comment.
Was this, I tried to address this in our first go-round of emails and walked back to the $150,000 variance from the million you had pointed out. Was
Yeah.
that not helpful?
Well, it was until I started looking at some of this detail over the weekend, and now I'm confused again, so. So if I am, I think other people are going to be too. So I don't know if that's a easy transition to get to. I mean, we know, I've seen it documented, the 728 number, okay? We also know that we're gonna probably have about an increase of $400,000 on benefits. We're gonna have about a $400,000 increase in minimum wage, spread out, obviously. So that's 800, so let's say those two are wiped out. So where's the difference between what we actually spent in 2019 and what we're projecting to spend in 21?
Well, if you're looking back at 19, and that's where I was saying, that also included a huge jump for the minimum wage and stuff. So you're not looking at 20, you want a comparison of 19 to 21?
Well, because I'm not sure 20 gives us a true picture of it. That's what I'm concerned about. Because and maybe it's because, do we have a flavor for what compensation we didn't pay?
In 20,
Yeah.
we had a drastic reduction in recreation and food and beverage, which I was estimated 400 and something thousand on that spreadsheet I had sent in the email. And that's from this year.
So, if I'm understanding you correct, then you're indicating that the 2020 forecast of compensation is more likely in line with where we need to be. But then we still have a difference in,
So if you look at 2020 to 21 and you add the 400 and something thousand I added today for the insurance increase, this is also expecting fully staffed for all of those positions that are vacant and continuing.
okay, well, that's
But I think
the,
the prior budgets also assumed full staff.
Yeah,
Right,
they
but
did.
then when you compare that to actual, you're
Okay.
gonna have a variance there.
well, under the new document you just handed out, then my confusion becomes even greater. Because the forecast says we're gonna end up at 15,390. But we're gonna spend 17,300 next year. It's $2 million.
$2 million.
Yeah.
I can't, it's just not computing.
Well,
And maybe
So
I'm
much-
being dense.
So much is minimum wage, so much is other merit increases. so much is taxes, so much is insurance.
But
so
When you
much
look at the
is-
whole picture, so you're looking $2 million variance right there is what you're looking at. So if you take out the $500,000 for insurance and those increases, you take out the $450,000 or something for the fact that we did not have those positions being paid for 6 months.
That's a category.
And the $400,000, or actually $567,000 for increase for this year for minimum wage, you're back down to a much smaller variance than 2 million.
okay, so 500 would have been approximately for wages we didn't pay. Wages not paid in 20. Okay. 400 for the 10% increase in the minimum wage?
That was actually 567,000.
Oh, it's 567.
Is the wage increase effect.
567, okay.
And then you had the 11.7% increase on benefits, which was somewhere between 400 and 500,000.
So let's give you the benefit of the doubt.
Because it was a $2.7 million expense that went up by 11.7.
Okay, so if I, in round numbers, then I come to 1.1 million.
And then there was one other thing that I just mentioned.
I think
You
being
hired-
fully staffed.
Fully staffed.
Yes, the open positions
I
that
thought
are,
that was the 500.
no, those were just the reductions due to COVID.
Right, that we didn't pay wages on.
Well, that's irrelevant of whether it was, so for example, the budget for 2021, that's gonna include your seasonal people at the pool and so forth. That may not have had any effect this year, so what we looked at was the trend in 20 from month over month and those, so it's in addition.
Well, again, yeah, I understand that. You've got 567, you said, on the increase because of minimum wage.
Plus of the safety. The fire, police.
Okay, then you've got 500 on benefits. And I thought I heard you say that the amount that we're dealing with for the 2020 workers that didn't work is around 500,000. Okay, so I'm still back to 1.1. I have,
But aren't there some positions that weren't,
There's-
they weren't deferred, as I understand it anyway, they weren't deferred in 2020. There are positions that were open and you're planning to fill them in 2020.
all right, well, I'm not all the way through my equation here.
Sorry.
So, all that being said, these are all adds. These are things we didn't have this year or in previous years that we have no control over. A
Well,
number that I was reported to me this last week was that we have, in reorganization, we have lowered our salaries 700,000. So if I take the 700,000 away from the 1.1, my increase should only be 400,000. I'm looking at 2 million. All I'm saying is, I'm having trouble making that leap. I think our property owners will have trouble making that leap. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the board's gonna have trouble making that leap. So we've got to figure out, and I'm not being critical here, I'm just, I want us to get an accurate budget. But those numbers are not computing to me. I can't make them work. So, and maybe that's me.
Well, I'll work on trying to do a reconciliation between, from 19 through now, and I will email.
Yeah, and I'm not so much, what you did was confuse me worse, because the 2020 forecast number on this last version that I got was at 16,000,005 and now it's at 15,000,003.
Well, I apologize, this may not have updated with the rest of these. Like I said, I was doing this at the
Okay,
very
yeah,
last minute.
gosh, I hope that's the case.
I will double check that.
Okay.
I did print these 5 minutes before I got here.
Regardless of what that amount is, and I know you'll check it, we just need to show the reconciliation.
I understand.
I'm worn out, I gotta go take a nap.
But I think some of the comments that we made, and it may be somewhat hard work, but it may help in understanding it, not necessarily, it won't be nicely summarized, which you're gonna be working on. But if, well, let's just continue kind of down the path I started, which it's sort of the basic information that funnels up to the question that you were asking, because I think we all appreciate it's kind of a hot topic. So again, back to our friend, page 4.
One more comment on compensation?
sure.
Just one more comment on compensation. Overall, again, page 4, we show total employee headcount going down 28. That's 26 part-timers and 2 full-timers.
And that's from budget to budget.
Yes. I go to the last page, page 12. Recreation is going down 29.
Now, recreation had a division, R150, which was grounds maintenance, that in the past, it was in recreation. This current year, 2020, it was put under public services, public works. For 21, it goes back to recreation because they are the ones maintaining the trails and so forth. So all their work really is recreation oriented. So for simplicity purposes of comparing a budget to the budget, I moved our 150's department information in with recreation, so that you didn't have to go back and say, okay, wait, let me flip over to Public Works, what was that history, back it out, add it back to 19.
So we're not really losing 29 people.
No, they are shifted.
Okay, how many are being shifted? What's that shift?
I'd have to look and see exactly how many they have, but I wanna say it's roughly 20 or so.
Okay, all right, I think, do we have anybody gonna be out there at recreation at all?
No.
Okay. all right.
And marketing is handled the same way. Marketing is being combined with the tourism. So CM10 is combined in with CD50. It will be one department, not two.
All right,
Okay,
got it.
It might be nice to list those changes somewhere too in a summary.
Well, and I
Yeah,
think I
let's get
had them on the
people-
bottom of these sheets, but I may not have put them in the print window. I will make sure I include that.
This is perhaps a very stupid question, but on page 4, it shows the 2021 budget is 18,466 for compensation, and on the consolidated, it's 17,3033.
That's why I said the front page didn't update
Okay.
from when I
I
included
missed
the
that.
increase in insurance this morning.
okay. Since John brought this up, the minus 25 for on the part-time and recreation, you're saying you shifted that, but when I look at Public Works, there's not an offsetting number. Are you saying it's shifted in one place, but not, there's no equivalent offset? So in other words, if you happen to add everything up, they wouldn't go away.
I might have done that.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
the first thing was to look to see
Yes.
if there was an offset, and there wasn't, so anyway, okay. So other than the brilliant advice, fix it,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have any further comments. So,
Which, and I think golf, I believe. Okay, no, yeah, it wasn't that one.
okay,
Anyways.
so, back to page 4. I'm kind of with said about comparing 21 to 20 budget, I'm not a big fan. So when I look at page 4, one of the columns is 20 budget, and I guess I really would like to see 20 forecast. And maybe just because this year is this year, 2019 actual would be nice, but if it's, you know, you have to jump through hoops to get it, then, you know, you don't have to do it, but I think that's more important, the 2020 forecast. The other thing that I kind of like, and again, this is for discussion, when I look at part-time, it's head count. I'm a big fan of full-time equivalents. How do people feel about that, or am I the only person in the room who loves FTEs? Okay, I don't see a lot of enthusiasm for
Well,
that.
Well, you might be. You might be.
Okay.
Along that line, when I'm looking at some of these budgets, I notice the overtime wages paid to some add up to more than what several FTEs would be. And so that causes me to question whether we're utilizing our staffing resources the way we need to. So FTEs do mean something to me, but it's in comparison to, are we spending our salary dollars the best? Are we trying to cover with overtime wages for something that really needs a staff addition?
I think you'll find most of your hit for the overtime wages has to do with the police and the fire. I mean, with their schedules that they have, instead of a 2080, it's a 2181 and a 2191. And they do receive the overtime. So those two departments I know are a big chunk of the overtime expense. Which
Is that
we had
police?
discussed, police and fire.
And fire, yeah, fire is the highest.
Right, and
Yeah.
even when we met with them and try to compute how many people it would take to hire to eliminate the overtime, it was,
He said like 16 or 17
Yeah.
people to eliminate it. But the job doesn't have to necessarily be to eliminate all of it, just get it down to, you know, a manageable level. I think we estimated it was about 50%. Yeah, so get it down to 10 would be a substantial saving.
And kind of the last thing along those lines is when you have full-time employees, part-time employees, is it worthwhile to put the dollar amount in those two lines, just, you know, generally what the average is per the line, and that concept carries over when you do the same thing at the division level.
an average pay for full-time and
Just the
part-time.
total dollar amounts, I mean, I can calculate the average if I have to.
Oh,
And so can you.
full-time compensation is this and
Yeah.
part-time is this,
So,
to add up to whatever the total is
Yeah.
on the front.
So when you get down to the division level, and it's a lot more interesting at the division level.
Yeah.
To have, you know, full-time dollar, you know, head count number, part-time head count FTE, because dividing the dollar amounts by FTE by head count is pretty meaningless. You have to divide it by the FTEs. And then you get an idea of, you know, what you're paying these people. Again, I don't know that it's really important this year, but a lot of my thinking really is, you know, kind of idealistic, and a lot of them are, maybe if we can do it next year, you know, set up your system so it comes out easily instead of
Right,
you
'cause right
having.
now, our full-time
Right.
versus part-time are not recorded differently.
Right, okay, if that's the
When you
case,
look at payroll, you're looking at a snapshot in time, so it doesn't account for how many
Right.
full-time people have left and come, or got replaced with part-time people. So if you're wanting that in actual information, yes, that would be very, very cumbersome
Mhm.
for me to
Right.
to tackle it.
But if you did it, you know, even on a reasonably approximate basis every month, then it should be, if you can capture that and then just massage it one time, it'd be a whole lot easier. But yeah, just something to think about. I think there's a lot more information if you can capture that. But like I said, if it's really too burdensome, then I guess, you know, ultimately don't do it. The last thing is, I guess, John, you brought this up, you may want to speak to it, but you're interested in breakdowns by pay grade? Is that?
Well, you know, that speaks to me, I was wondering, okay, I heard, and I guess the number now, minimum wage impact was 500,000 or something like that, you know. How
567.
how many employees receive that dollar bump to get to the new minimum wage? That's just something that I thought people should know. It'd be interesting. How many is that? And that is worth, that is worth so many dollars. Okay. How many people, I think if I read that right, you're also adjusting other wages up slightly
So,
to keep them, so that suddenly a person now that's just making minimum wage is not within 20 cents maybe of somebody that's been here 5 years, correct?
we're trying to
Yeah.
we're trying to avoid having that conflict.
Right.
Our payroll, or our pay scale system has been set where it's got different pay grades. There's a 50% overlap between pay grades depending on different criteria and so forth. But last year, they did levels 1 through 4 for the minimum wage increase. This year, we've done levels 1 through 5. We've picked up 5 because, as you stated, you are outpacing somebody who's been here longer or whatever the case may be. So level 5 is getting the 2.4%.
Okay.
And then 1 through 4 are 10%.
To keep them a certain gap ahead of
Yes.
the minimum wage people, yeah.
Yeah, good strategy, by the way,
Yeah.
because some people don't, well, so a lot of people haven't done that in the past. And you get problems with personnel.
Oh, absolutely, you'd be having more turnover if you didn't do that. But, no, I just thought if you just took us through that step by step, we would see in terms of real dollars, what's that worth? Minimum wage, 500,000. Bringing some others up to a gap, so they're now staying ahead of that gap is worth, I don't know, 100,000. You know, all that adds up to the breakdown and the total of the compensation number that.
And that's the reconcilement, I think,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
looking
all
for.
part of that reconciliation.
And I hope that's not that difficult. I think we have some general numbers that we've been dealing with anyway, but
Well, the 567 that I pulled, which is related to the increases, that's, I will go back and I will pull head count for each one of those so that you guys can see how many people are affected by that number. And I will add that with this as well.
Good.
Any other discussion about compensation? I think that was the big topic and perhaps the most difficult one to address, but
well,
I guess-
maybe not.
maybe not. Okay, you got more.
No, I mean,
Okay.
maybe not from the standpoint of if we get the reconcilement so that
Right.
it's easily understandable to everybody. I don't, you know, it is what it is.
I guess while we're on the topic, you said that a fairly large cost driver, something to the tune of $450,000, was basically benefits?
It's health insurance that is going up.
Yikes.
What was it, 11.7%?
It went up 11.7. Last year, it was about the same amount of an increase.
Okay.
We went from averaging 7,400, I believe, in 20, or in 19 going in, for 20, going to 21, it went to 78, which was, so our 20 cost is 7,800 for those that elect to use it. And this, going into 21, it's 11.7% above that.
So that's the cost per person?
Mhm.
Yikes. Okay.
Does that go out, is that with the same company year to year? Or does that go out for bid at all, or a look at deductibles and things of that nature?
They gave us a few different options to try to minimize that.
But all for the
Which-
same company?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a large company that,
Yeah. Well, you can't switch every year. That's understandable, but.
but we kind of discussed and felt that okay, if I give you $1 for a minimum wage increase, so you're making minimum wage and I give you $1, and then I say, okay, give me $5 back to cover the insurance cost, we're gonna have a lot more turnover at that point. So what we decided to do was try to go ahead and absorb it for this year, and we are going to completely reevaluate our tiers and breakdowns and so forth going into 21 while we have, or into 22 when we have more time to really reassess and analyze that.
I don't know, the way you described it, it's kind of the way Social Security does to us.
Okay. So with that, I think we can leave page 4.
I'm ready.
So let's go back, I guess, to page 1. And I think page 1, 2, and 3 are all kind of one big long story. Is that a fair statement? Any comments? Does this spur any discussion?
Well, I think in one of your comments, you had a revelation in going through
The
the
cash,
numbers for and it's gonna impact the ending cash on hand for could you take us through that so we all?
well, as you guys know, recently, the year-end cash projection was a new report that was added in the last couple of months. I've been updating it as I went through trying to really analyze and took a moment. It was including all of our accrued liabilities, which includes everything from our health insurance accruals, our PTO accruals, all of that. But it was being accounted for as if it was all due at the end of the year, all going to be paid out. That's not the case. Those are continuous rolling.
Continuous rolling accruals.
Now, yes, everybody quits tomorrow, we will have PTO to pay out. But that's not a true expectation. Yes, it's a liability, but it's not a cash by year-end situation. So what I had done was, and let me see if I got what I sent you guys. So if you notice in the email that went out, I went back and I took the annual budget and our year-to-date actual for our revenue, expense, capital. I averaged our last 2 months, because we're kind of back on pace. We're hopefully done making a lot of changes. Things aren't being as affected so bad as by COVID and so forth. If I take the average of our last 2 months and I multiply that by the 3 months left for the year, that gives us a forecast versus what had been coming out, which is drastically different. So then what I wanted to be able to show you guys was if I took the readjusted cash position at the end of the year, and we account for all of these other items, which are balance sheet items and so forth that take place, and we assume, so for example, the change in other liabilities of this $547,000, that's what was 3-point-something million on the other report. So this is what it actually changed, and will and represents 3 months worth of it. So that gets us going back down, allocating the reserves and all of that, which you see on these first couple of pages, down to a cash balance. Now that cash balance down there does not include what we receive for annual renewals. So as those go on sale in January, or in December, it's advanced revenue. We don't acknowledge it until later, but that money is in the bank. So this cash balance is actually higher than that as far as floating. So yes, it's very different than
So what was the net gain in cash at the end of the year?
our year-end cash projection on this, with me removing the escrow account. Because what is in a operating cash on the balance sheet is made up by several accounts. The escrow account is one of those, which we don't utilize unless the board says, hey, let's tackle this project. So I backed that out of it. Your year-end cash is looking at 4.8 million, which is drastically different.
Whoa. Yeah, a lot different.
So,
All those sleepless nights.
which, like I said, that does allow for us to be able to set up some of these other accounts. Now, with the hit of the insurance adjustments and so forth that was made this morning, that means we're not gonna be able to put as much set aside for capital later. But what we're trying to do is separate funds between what it truly costs to operate day in and day out versus capital. And the way it's set up right now, between the way the accounts are set up and the way we operate, if we have something drastic like COVID hit, you've already been spending capital funds. So then you're at a halt, and what happens with your operational funds if it was that bad? So this is trying to set us up in a position where we can continue to have all of our operating expenses, separate the capital, build that up. So our true plan is, so say we made $1 million net income next year, and you have to allocate every piece of it. Well, if we were able to say, okay, let's put in, 500,000 of that, let's plan on using 300,000. So we will continue to try to build these even though we are using it, but we didn't want it set up in the same manner as the reserve accounts, because those have to be fully funded and have other restrictions. This would allow us to keep continuing to purchase capital, but already have the funds.
Yeah, pay as you go, basically.
Yes.
Good strategy.
But yes, so with that all being said, and the reevaluation of the year-end cash projections, it's a little better than it was looking.
I would say so.
Like I said, wahoo!
I would say so. Okay.
Can we go to an easy one, Tom?
Huh?
Can we go to an easy one?
Any moment, we're almost there. I guess I'm compelled to say this. The escrow account, what you're proposing to me, and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong or differently. Prior to this proposal, we had one big gigantic blob of money that we have labeled operating cash. And now what you're saying is, let's take the concept of operating cash, which is currently something like 5.5 million or something or other, and essentially break it into smaller pieces, or earmarking it.
Into 3 pieces.
Into
Two capital, so one's utility capital, the non-utility, so for everything else, and
Right.
then the rest is still operating.
Operating, okay, very good. Right now, I've always wanted to ask the question, that escrow fund, where is it? And the answer has always been, it's in operating cash, which always seemed to me to be exactly where you didn't want it to be.
Which is why, on what I said,
Right.
I broke it out.
Right, and so I guess, I don't think this is heresy, but as far as I'm concerned, you could take the escrow amount and put it into capital, your capital fund today. So, because that was always, not only was its intention, but we've been operating that way, we've been managing it that way. So
I'd
it-
probably get my hand slapped if I did that one though. It would get
Well,
caught.
well, yeah, I understand that, but that's the way, to me, that's the way it always should have been. The escrow amount should have always been reported separately.
Set up as restricted.
Yeah, and not just mushed in with operating cash, and, you know, and managed on that basis. But anyway, that was probably me on my soapbox. Okay. The other thing is, implicitly, in this budget, you've sort of targeted certain amounts and, you know, there's no, you know, absolute commitment, but it kind of gives you an idea of where you're headed. And I'm not exactly sure, there we go. If you go to, golly, there's no page number. Page 3, toward the bottom, where it says addition to reserves, 2022 capital fund utilities, 1796, capital funds general, 1221, and then the very, very bottom line is 0.
So in the past, if you look at the budget, this line has always come to
Right,
zero.
right, I understand that. But, the reality is, you don't want to manage your operating cash down to 0, probably ever. So just like, to me, kind of the way I'm thinking is, you know, you have targets for your general utilities, capital fund, and your, you know, and your general capital fund, on a managerial basis, shouldn't you have a sort of a target for your operating cash? I mean, to me, just pulling numbers out of the air, but these are kind of reasonable numbers. You always want your operating cash to be at least, you know, $1.5 million or $2 million, something like that.
Well, it should be 6 months of operations,
Uh,
theoretically.
Well, yeah. That would be true of virtually all of our funds. I mean, that's,
Right, and
And
I
that will
understand
compete-
where you're coming from.
yeah, and that will compete against
My,
all your other demands for cash.
my understanding with this
Mm-hmm.
was every dollar had to be allocated for.
Right,
So if you look at the end of last year, there was 272,000 left, so it went to a reserve account,
right,
or, there was one other transaction and it's missing me at the moment. But it's to come to 0 so that you're allocating for your current year's net income.
mhm,
So if you also think about the fact that we are breaking out these two capital accounts,
mhm,
we're really not coming to 0 because currently we're pulling that out of operating.
mhm.
All we're doing is, these are operating accounts, they're just designated for the capital, so it's kind of a wash. Except it's not being muddied together.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if you created a line above the line for, say, $1.5 million, that would just force all your other numbers to add up to negative $1.5 million. Which I think is, to me, that's more reasonable, and that's what you're really going to be managing to. That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're gonna be doing in January, February, March, blah, 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 is you're gonna be making essentially day-to-day decisions on how you spend your money. But I'm saying, when you're taking a bird's eye view of what you're gonna be doing for the whole year, it wouldn't bother me to add another line which says operating to reserve, additions to reserve. Right now, there is no line for operating cash. That's just the way I would go about doing it.
You would add a line additions to reserves?
Well, that's what I would do.
But that's what the entire bottom section
Yeah,
is.
this is all additions to reserves.
I know, but the first two lines right now don't exist. So what I'm saying is, if you add another line that just says operating cash, right now, as presented, that's zero. If you put in $1.5 million, then all your other numbers are forced to go down by $1.5 million, which to me is a lot more realistic target than what you're presenting here. If everything in this budget comes absolutely true, you will end up the year with zero operating cash. If you say, well, I really want to have $1.5 million of operating cash, then you will be forced to reduce everything else by $1.5 million. As,
Up until this point with
Mhm.
the PPP loan,
Hmm?
the operating does
Oh, yeah.
not run at $1 million.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. I mean, Charles was absolutely correct when he said, A, this is really confusing. And B, without the $3 million, we'd be,
Right.
paddling in
And this
another
doesn't take
river.
into account what's already in the bank.
Mhm.
This is only looking at a 2021, so it's assuming you're starting your bank balance at zero, and you're getting it back to zero.
Not really, because it starts out with, I don't know, okay.
It takes revenue minus expenses.
Right. It starts out with, on the top of page 3, it starts out with a $4.7 million operating margin. So that's the cash coming in during the year. Right? Top of page 3. The 4,692 is your operating margin from all the stuff on page 2.
Yes.
So that comes in through, during the year. The next other items, other funding sources, forgiveness of PPP loan, usage of prior year rollover utility funds, those 4 lines, they're roughly $4.7 million, which ties to the cash projection you just did. That is what you're starting with. These 4 numbers essentially are a stand-in for starting cash. So you're not starting with 0, you're starting with $4.7 million on 1/1. During the year, you're gonna generate 4.6 million or 4.7 million. And then if you don't spend any of it, you're gonna end up with 9.348 million. And then all this stuff is how you allocate the $9.4 million.
The way I understood it, and I could have been incorrect, obviously, but with the fact of needing to allocate for everything down to 0 is why everything else goes into those other accounts.
All I can say is, I've had an opportunity to say my piece, I've said it, I'm happy.
Well, I want to understand, I want us to have the same concept and be able to figure it out.
Well, like I said, we've set a bunch of reasonable targets. Like it or not, during the year, we're gonna manage all of our accounts as best we can. And I'm just saying, during the year, we are going to manage operating cash, however you earmark it, to a fairly significant number, probably not 6 months worth. Okay.
This may be a silly question, but while we're on that page, my email, Tom Heffer, it looks like golf reserves are looked to increase $1,700. Am I reading that wrong? That's the 2020 forecast versus 2021 budget?
So, no, that would actually start over, the 475,
Goes into a reserve account?
It-
Okay,
yes.
that answers
The
that.
476 is for 2021 alone.
Okay, Thank you.
And that,
Dumb
it's
question.
being added to that reserve every month.
Yes, yes, I like that. Thank you, that makes more sense. Sorry.
So I think I'm done beating up pages 1 through 3. Are
Right.
there any more comments on?
Oh, not me.
Okay, you are, floor is yours.
I have a general question. The operating expenses from the previous version that I had, we were at 12,467,000. Now we're at 13,716,000. I know I'm catching you off guard, but I just got this at the beginning of the meeting. So there's a $1,248,000 difference between the sheet that I've been reviewing and this document.
And which line are you looking at?
Operating expenses on page 1,
831.
in their aggregate.
830.
Okay, so from the 13,716 and,
Yeah, the good news is they're down about $800,000 even from 2019 actual, which I think is good. But I'm just curious where that extra 1.2 million came from the previous version that I was looking at.
is that the one, I know I've made a few changes along the way.
I just printed this like Friday.
Okay.
That's this one that had all the detail in it that you would have given to Ella on, that I picked up Friday.
I think
So,
I may have the.
and you don't need to answer that question right now. That's,
Well, I made all those, the only changes I've made since then was all the insurance adjustments this morning.
okay, well, I just don't know if there's a rollover problem here or what, but that's
No, I
a,
think I have the answer for you. I think I have the answer for you, because I'm looking at mine. Mine says the same thing. But if you look at some of the division summary sheets, look at some of the division summary sheets. I'm looking at the year-to-date, the 2020 year-to-date that it's based off of. Some of my sheets say July.
Oh, it's all August.
It's all, well, wait a minute, say July, and I'm thinking this
Ah.
new one says August.
They were all based off of August. I had originally a
Oh,
month.
both versions are
Yes,
based on-
yes. I just failed to update probably a column description. They are all based off August year-to-date actual.
well,
Well, then
if, when you
that's
get a
not the
chance, if you can just give me an idea why that number is so much different than the previous version I looked at, that's,
Yes.
I mean, it's still running lower than what we experienced, and we would expect expenses to go up in '21 because we wouldn't spend as much in '20.
I'll get you that
Does
in.
that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was it. Morris, did you have something?
Golf on page 11, that's next to the last page. I was looking at the full-time, and it shows that we're either adding 4 new people or maybe replacing some recs that weren't filled.
We are adding 4 new positions in golf maintenance, which is the departments that take care of the golf courses. That's 4 courses to get a new person, full-time.
And then it said lean on expenses. I didn't know if there was something else that's supposed to be on there too, or is that the statement, lean on expenses? And
We've taken the approach to try to go in and examine everything that we're currently spending. Where can we cut? What methods do we need to look at to utilize our buying power? Make sure we're doing our due diligence.
I know the superintendent gave us a presentation on buying on volume discount, you know, and
Yes.
saved like $50,000 with the drop shipment. Okay, so that's,
Also along that line, my understanding was that we were probably understaffed in the maintenance side of the golf department anyway.
Yes. my understanding is there actually used to be a 4-man crew that traveled between the courses to help take care of a lot of the maintenance that the little group was dissolved some years ago, and it's very, very beneficial. So rather than bringing the group back though, they've asked for another hands on deck to help maintain things.
Well, again, this will be one of those categories where the compensation line is considerably different than 2020 forecast and 2019 actual.
Yeah, that's $845,000.
Substantial, $800,000. That's a big chunk of increase.
Yep.
So we need to just validate that that's an accurate number. Or explain it, one of the two. But I don't think 4 people is gonna make up $200,000 apiece.
No, but there'd be a lot of part-time, and, I mean, the minimum wage increase would impact that.
Some, yeah.
Golf did take the biggest
be a
hit
lot.
for the for the minimum wage increase. While not everybody utilizes benefits because they do have part-time people,
Well, not to.
they have a lot of them.
Not to belabor the compensation line, but that one, $800,000 overall is one of the big chunks in that number. So for during the reconciliation, that needs to be factored in.
Which on this sheet, if you'll go back, golf is sitting at 180,000 of that increase.
Yeah.
So,
No, I figured it would because of the groundskeepers. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Anything further on pages 1 through 3? Yeah.
I've got a very minor thing on the fees, that on tennis hourlies, the non-member, I don't think you changed it to, it was at for 2 hours. Again, it's a very minor thing, but
I don't think I brought the fees. The tennis 1 hour? You said
for
it was-
non-members, you had said before it was just a typo. The hourly fee was doubled, but it said members 1 hour and then non-members 2 hours.
Is that one of the ones at the bottom of the section? Because there was, I also had where it was 1 and there was 2 of them that were actually 2 hour. I thought it was all corrected. I'll double check it.
I can send it to you if
I'll
that would be
double check
easier.
it.
Okay. Again, it's minor. It's a grain of sand.
In fact, I can probably just pull it up here. I can kinda-
Okay, just want to move on to another broad topic, capital expenditures. Can you just kind of update us where we are on that?
On,
Well, I think one of the requests was for each department, you know, kind of what their capital expenditures are and kind of what their key projects are.
yes, which, and then that's where I said, well, I'll get all of that verbiage and all their planning and all of that added. And that is, I'm working on pretty much
That's
your,
Kind of what
yes.
this is,
Right.
right?
This is all of your fixed asset with which
Okay,
there may be one or a few items that are missing a description off of this.
Mhm.
Oh, well, they're kind of self-explanatory.
Right. Okay, so basically, when you add up all of these, you're gonna
This
come
is
up.
that 4 million that is on the
Okay.
budget,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
Wait a minute, I missed that last part. If you add up all of these, they add up to, what was that again? What did you ask?
4 million,
They have 4,179,098, something like that. Yeah, on the front page, they have the capital expenditures.
Yeah.
But I'll get it in a prettier format for you.
Okay, that's, for now, that's definitely good enough to.
So this
to
is
look at.
supposed to be all-inclusive then for 2021?
This feeds the budget,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Other things may come up on an as-needed basis to be totally
Yeah.
justified from scratch, but this feeds the budget. Okay, got it.
And I would like to note that the budget does include what has not been proposed yet, which is the sidearm sanitation trucks.
Is the what?
The sidearm sanitation trucks,
Oh, okay.
to change that, so the budget is worked around if you guys approve and the board approves that plan. He is ready to present, he's just waiting for me to say we have a break for him to come in and let us hear all of that. It will save some money over what we are currently spending. It'll drop the employee count down, which is where we're having trouble keeping staff anyways. Our liability issues will drop because you don't have somebody hanging off the back of a truck and so forth. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that is in here based upon you guys hearing that out.
It's in 2021?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and just because we're talking about that, we also have the election system thing that needs to be taken up yet this year, so there's a cost associated with that, but I assume there was money in the budget for that process. I just don't know how it compares to what, so,
Let me follow up on that.
yeah, be good. I did mean to mention that today because it's something that happens annually, so we need to make sure the budget's accounting for that expense.
Is that phone system project, is that just a
That,
complete replacement of the system because it's antiquated?
our phone system, I cannot tell you how old it is, but we have been told that it's no longer supported.
It can't be more than 50 years old.
Okay,
What
it's
could
less
possibly
than
be wrong with
50, but it is technology. So yes, it's not supported anymore. If we have something go wrong, we're kind of in a pickle.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think has been on the budget for a few years. It just has been pushed several times. This, I think, also would allow for us to get, I think, it's the fire or the police that are within this phone system, and we want to be able to get them on something separate. That way, if we have issues, it's not going to cause them issues.
Okay.
Okay, I have a couple of issues down in the weeds.
Okay.
And the first one isn't terribly important, it's probably more an issue of curiosity, but every once in a while, people do talk about it. We sell memberships, and not, well, not actively. You said that we just basically renew them if it's available. Do you know roughly how many of them we have on the books?
I would have to go back and get a count to know for sure, but probably a few hundred.
Yeah, because that was generally my impression. Yeah, the issue is just generally philosophically, should we be issuing them at all.
And I know they've gone back and forth on that. Sometimes they've wanted to actually advertise it and push it, and other times they don't, which is why we've stayed stagnant
Right.
in the fact of, we do send out a monthly notice for those that are, you know, have the option to renew, their years coming up and so forth, but we haven't advertised
Okay.
that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna push the issue, I was just curious, but that's really an issue of, you know, policy and what do you really want Hot Springs Village to be or not. Okay. I guess when I looked at Public Works, and I think this is particularly a problem with sanitation, where they have a pretty big expenditure for essentially filling in the people who work on the trucks, the garbage trucks. It had roughly $500,000 for the 2020 forecast and $300,000 budgeted for next year. And my first reaction was, is that enough?
Well, and that has to do with the fact of the sanitation plan being built in. It will reduce the number of employees or contracted employees.
So it's, in that particular case, it's a capital expenditure versus continuing to, being forced to hire contract workers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bet, one way or the other, okay.
I'm not sure which document it was in, but it seemed to me that the gate security, which was under police before, is now moved under compliance.
Correct.
But there was a reduction of that of about 400 some odd thousand, and it looked like,
It was taken out of one and put to the other, so.
right, but I assumed that that increased cost was associated with the minimum wage increase that would be coming with that contract, because I think I saw 400 coming out,
It's $617,000.
617, yeah.
Came out
Is-
of public safety.
Is that contract.
But currently or projected?
Currently, I believe.
Well,
I'll go back and double check, but I know that they
Okay,
said that
well,
that was the contract.
we don't actually have a contract. We haven't had a contract.
With Allied
since-
Barton?
No, we haven't had one since 2016.
Okay, well, that is our current expense.
Right. So,
How is that?
but the number that came out of the police department, as I recall, was like 400,000, and it was 617 when it got over here. So my question was,
They both reflect 617,
oh, did they?
yes.
Yeah. I saw something.
Innovation is right in front of public
Con-
safety.
Contracts say 479. Is that not where Allied Barton was?
Where- I'm looking at this, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at police department,
Detail?
yeah. Where the budget was reduced 531,000. The 2020 year-end forecast is 479. But it got moved over at 617. I guess my only question was, is that increase as a result of them paying minimum wage? Is it gonna be, is that why there was a difference? Because it looked, I mean, it's right here on the sheet, it's 479,557.
And I would
haven't
assume
seen-
so,
I haven't
but let me
seen that.
double check that.
Pardon?
I would assume so, but let me double check that.
Okay. It's just a big number, so, but I asked, it did get shifted, and it just got shifted at a higher number. And I assume they have minimum wage employees, so I know the minimum wage increase was going to impact them. But I might mention that that is a month-to-month contract and has been since 2016, but I also know it's being looked at.
Yes. And I'll find you the answer on that.
I don't think there is any. I think it's just a shift and an increase in what we anticipate we're gonna pay, but I just wanted to make sure that was it. And I think that was probably the only in the weeds comment I had.
Okay. I have a few more.
Do you?
You mentioned that somewhere in all your assumptions, 50 lot sales.
The 100 new homes, 50 of them as far as the POA lots.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't account for, some of them are gonna be coming in, but hopefully, I think their plan is that they will try to come up with a way to start selling some of those.
Okay.
And I might mention for everybody's edification, there is a meeting tomorrow, an all-day meeting with the board, the realtors, a couple of the builders, some of the larger property owners, where we will be discussing lot sales
Mhm.
and what kind of program might be put in place to
Right.
see if we can't get rid of some more of these. So I think that could be a potential upside of this next year if, but I've also mentioned that we want to make sure we don't outstrip our ability to pay for infrastructure by building too many houses. I wish we could have that problem right now, but. By the way, when I checked the MLS this morning, there were a total of 85 properties for sale in the village, 70 of them houses, 15 of them townhomes. That's it.
That's up 7 from last month, isn't it? 75,
No, it's
87?
down. We had 77 not too long ago in houses.
Oh, didn't you say 85 today?
85 total.
Okay.
I guess my initial reaction was 50 lot sales seems pretty aggressive. So,
Well, like he stated, I think they're trying to really come up with some plans to address that. With the assumption of the 100 new house tops, not all of that's going to be, owner to owner. And with us trying to
right.
come up with some new avenues, so.
And the 100 new rooftops, that's also aggressive.
Well, and they're looking at ending a little over 70 this year of new rooftops,
Right.
so.
It's a small stretch, but I don't think it's so far out that either one of those markets can't be, those targets can't be hit and exceeded, hopefully.
Okay.
We need a year where we exceed some targets.
Okay. I guess a quick look at what you just handed out. Is there any allowance in here for culverts?
I saw it down here somewhere.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Where did it
For
go?
what again?
Culverts?
Yeah, it said something about culverts, so.
Yes. I know there was.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw it.
Well, it's definitely mentioned
It may have been
on
cut
page 1.
off
Okay.
when I printed the end of the text, if they cut, because it was at the end of one of these.
Okay. Because when I sent you an email, there was kind of somewhat of a detailed request for an update
And I
on
have you an
culverts.
answer.
Hmm?
And I have you an answer.
Oh, you do? Wow. That would be thrilling.
Let me flip.
Mhm.
So your first part of the question, no, I'm quoting from the responses I received.
Okay.
You've got in 2020, how many culverts will be done, broken down by number, cost, and contract versus in-house? 2020 high priority culverts, 5 culverts at $250,000 by the general contractor, 14 culverts at $60,000 by staff. Your question for in 2021, same estimates. It says 2021 high priority culverts, 4 culverts at the $250,000, which is the rollover from the allocation from this year, and 3 culverts at $150,000. 2021 budget by general contractor, 15 culverts at $60,000 by staff. Your next question, for the 163 tier 1 culverts, what is projected for completion, date, total cost, contract versus in-house? The answer was, this is being evaluated based on general contractor and HSB staff, cost of work completed in 2020. The culverts rehabbed in 2020 were condition 1 by the general contractor and condition 2 by the general staff. 3% progress was made towards the 163 condition 1 culverts in 2020. Your question, anything regarding forestry management or facility conditions usage worth mentioning? Forestry management 2021 has consulting fees budgeted for 2021 to begin development of a master forestry plan for the village. Most capital items were cut from the 21 budget.
Okay. I'm good with that. Very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, he had 2 more for you.
Oh, there's more.
You had lots of
This
questions.
is like Christmas.
Your question regarding contracts, and that was, for sanitation workers to be reduced from the 6 to the 3, pending the sanitation plan. Culverts, how much was targeted to culverts and in what lines? See comments I've made previously. So he says, see capital budget, and my response is above. 150 by general contractor and 60 by staff.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, I'm done with the weed eater. Any more questions, discussion items? Other than saying, it sounds like you have a lot of homework.
Get your kids to do it.
Yeah, oh yeah, y'all would be picking it apart more than you are now.
And I don't think, until we get more information from you, I don't think this committee is challenged to do anything in particular except keep an eye on our email in bin. Really what's next is, I have this room reserved for 1 o'clock next week again. Hopefully that's the last time this will be absolutely necessary. I'm gonna turn to Lloyd and ask him, is this progressing more or less acceptably, or what is your
I think it is, and I think this committee should be thanked, as well as the staff, for what they've done. This is gonna save the board a lot of work, and maybe keeping them out of the weeds on some of the small stuff that they probably shouldn't be worried about anyway. So
Okay,
very much appreciate what this committee is doing.
okay.
As a point of reference, a long time ago, I made travel plans for next week, so I will not be here
Okay.
Tuesday. Okay. I'll come back until late Thursday. So,
Okay, very good.
anyway. Hopefully we'll have Gary back at that time.
Okay, just go around the room for comments. Morris, you got any comments? You good? Think you offered yours?
No, other than, Karina, we've said it several times, but thank you for all you guys are doing. This is, I know this is stressful on you, and we're all learning this year, so that doesn't make it any easier, so, but thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Kathy?
I'm dumbfounded.
Dumbfounded.
John?
No, I don't have anything to add, really.
Okay.
A lot of hard work by everybody.
Karina, any comments?
Thank you guys for the effort. I know it takes time to review this stuff, and as you mentioned, it's new to me, it's new to most of you. And I think all of our goal, both in-house and out-of-house, is do what is best. And we're gonna get there, we are getting there, and so thank you for all of that. And I'll get all this to you as soon as possible.
So just to pile on, thank you very much for not only you and for all the staff, and to echo your comment, I mean, everything that we discussed here, we absolutely don't want to be taken as critical. We're not being critical. This is very hard work, and I know that, you know, you have to be putting in long hours, and so thank you very much. And you know, I think you know that we all want to be supportive, and we all are looking for the best possible product in a very, very short time. Last thing, comments from the audience. Maxine, oh, both of you, please.
Okay. I'll throw my thanks in also. I realize that the psychological test that says, are you sane or crazy, you guys all hit the crazy button. This is a tangled web. Everything interfaces with everything. So I think your first assignment is to control Mother Nature. Blank stare, okay? I don't know how you can predict tornadoes and floods and pandemics, but you get to live with it. You get to try and budget the best you can. And I think you understand when you're making choices, if we do this, we're not going to get that. So I think what's coming out is a list of the stuff that your decisions are impacting. Use culverts. Some of them are 50 years old. Some of them are 10 years old. The 50-year-old ones are going to deteriorate faster, so they have to get a higher priority, even though if you look at it today, it doesn't look so terrible. This other one looks worse. Facilities are aging out. Vehicles are aging out. And when you have a vehicle that's in the shop more than it's put to use, it isn't just a blind, we have these many dollars, so you can't buy anything new. We don't want you to hire more people. We don't want to pay the extra overtime. We want to keep our salaries and wages down. But you have to get the job done. So now you get to pick and choose how you're going to spend your limited amount of money. You have a terrible job to do. Filter all of the information that bubbles up to the top where you sit, and make some kind of sense out of it, and do something as reasonable as you know how to do without being able to project the future. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so happy to see you all here and to help us in a very complicated area, especially for us as homeowners who have no idea about the facts and figures of the financial side of it. When you talk about the budget and all of the things that go into it, it's so complicated for us. And without you here bringing up those various items that need to be talked about and discussed and brought an understanding, it's a huge amount of work, and I appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much. One of the things that brought my attention was the PPP loan that I had remembered was had to be paid off within a certain time limit. And as I remembered, it was 6 months, otherwise there was to be a $44,000 interest to be paid against that. Could you please tell me if that is going to be paid off, or how can it be just put to the side and not be paid off? I don't understand that.
So in the application process for forgiveness, they offer, depending on when you had filed for the loan, there was a 2-year payback or a 5-year payback that was available. We did submit our application for forgiveness. The bank has already approved it. They have passed it along to the Small Business Administration. It has been there roughly a month or so. They have approximately 3 months to make a determination, so we are expected full forgiveness come January or February, hopefully. Our expenses did exceed the amount of the loan that was out there.
Well, thank you very much, I appreciate that. And maybe Lloyd can bring me up to date on what I'm about to say here. I noticed at the last POA meeting that the review itself was very rosy, according to we had pockets of money here and there and everything looked really great. And then we come up for a vote of the CPI increase. And I had noticed back in the 2018 declarations that that was a no vote. And then what has changed that does not allow property owners to vote on that? Could you bring me up to an understanding?
Well, I'm not sure if I totally understand your question, but the current situation is that we can increase annually by the Southern CPI, which is this year 0.3%, I believe. So that does not require a vote of the declarations by the property owners. That would only be if we were going to go outside of a normal CPI index increase. If we were going to not do it, it would have required a vote by the board not to do it. If we were going to suggest an increasement in assessments, that would require a full membership vote.
Then may I ask, what is the difference between a Southern CPI and a regular CPI?
It's based on the region.
So that this region in Arkansas is regarded Southern CPI? Am I interpreting that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you. Then we come down to the fees that were increased, those fee increases have something to do with the CPI, or was that in relationship that what needed to be done for each, say, library from $9.45 to $20 and other things raised at various points? Now, did that mean that those assessments needed to be raised for certain reasons? Like the library, could you give me an understanding of why that assessment might have gone up?
Sure. Again, annual review of fees is standard. It is done typically by the committees that oversee that particular aspect, and a recommendation is made based on their assessment of what the fees need to be. As you're well aware of, in the past, many of those committees have been ignored. This board chose not to do that. We pretty much took the recommendations of the committee. Those committees worked on those diligently. They felt that the fees needed to be raised in certain areas, and we weren't going to get into the weeds and question them on each and every one of them. There are a couple that have come out since then that we are going to be discussing, but that is totally separate from the CPI. CPI is just cost of living kind of increases, which doesn't even make up for the minimum wage increase that we're going to take. So the assessments are here to pay for the infrastructure, not so much the amenity use, and that's what the fee structure is supposed to be for. So I hope that answers your question.
Would one of those other fee assessments be, and I noted it because it just sort of popped out, is the $500 POA privileges fee. And could you give me an overview of what that represents?
Well, it'll be on the fee schedule, but that is it's an annual pass that is going to encompass several of the activities.
I think you're referring to just the golf item, correct?
Well, it doesn't say, it doesn't tell us whether it's an annual fee, or what it
$500.
represents, or,
I think you're talking about, we're essentially, quote, selling memberships,
Yes.
unquote. So for $500 a year, anybody can pay us $500. They will essentially get the equivalent of a membership card. Then they can come in here and pay member rates for any of our amenities. I think that's what you're referring to.
I am referring to that.
Okay.
Then with that being said, how about, does this affect the lot sales? If, let's just say, okay, I live someplace else, I can come here and play golf or have the other privileges, but then I don't have to buy a lot. And maybe it would be incentive not to have that POA $500 fee, to give me the incentive to buy a lot perhaps. And maybe not, people say, well, not all the lots can be buildable. Well, most of them are buildable and have a positive effect in that respect for lot sales. So am I wrong in saying that this would not be good for lot sales?
You're definitely right. This has been discussed in the past. The reality is that there is an open market for memberships exactly like that. You can buy them on the internet or, looking through the newspaper. It's a philosophical issue. Should the POA be selling memberships or not, or should it actually be tied to an actual lot sale initiative? Again, it's been discussed a little bit over the year. The POA has never really sat down and driven a stake in the ground and say, yes, we will, or no, we won't. But what you're saying is
Okay, so I wasn't sure which fee we were talking about here. So yes, to what he's saying, that's about equivalent to what somebody would pay for a lot sale in their annual fees anyway. However, good timing and good question. I will bring this up tomorrow at the lot sales program because that's what we're talking about tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate everyone here. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you for your comments. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Okay,
Yeah.
meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.